First question for you this morning. Just let me know in the comments, what state do you live in? Just let me know in the comments, what state are you in? Keen to see what state. It's good for me to get to know these things. What state are you in? So Kirrily, New South Wales, good. Jeff, New South Wales, good. Kelly's New South Wales. Daniel's in Queensland. Mike's in Western Australia, beautiful. Robbins is in New South Wales. Adrian, Queensland. Amber is in Queensland. Kyla's in Queensland. Fiona's in New South Wales. Yes, well, some of these I did know. Very good. Almost correct. Almost. Let me ask you again. What state are you in? Let me ask this way. What state are you in today? Michael says he's in Queensland, the smart state. Okay, here we go. Kyla is in a state of happiness. All right. Ben's in New South Wales still. Well, that's awesome. Let me ask you the question again. What state do you find yourself in this morning? See if that gives you a slightly different answer that you may find yourself in today. Lauren's still in New South Wales. Okay, good. Keep them covered because the penny is going to drop at some point. What state do you find yourself in this morning? A state of joy, Susan. Congratulations. Jan is in a state of contentment. Daniel has got the worst kind of sickness anybody can ever imagine, and that's the man flu. Lord Jesus, heal him, please. Amber is in a state of hopefulness. That's really good. Fiona's in a state of Mondayitis. Well, it's good that you're honest. Mike is in a state of being expectant. Kate is in a state of activity. Mondayitis. Very good. So you understand now that there's two very different ways to answer the same question. You know, you went with the most obvious answer first, and that's fine. And when we expanded on it, you came up with a new one. Jeff is tired, and that's okay too. Megan's in a positive state today. New staff member induction day, and some freedoms, I believe, being added to your life as you go through this. Michael is excitement. We've got our first trip running since March today. Well, praise God for that, Michael. The reason why I bring up this question around what state do you find yourself in is because we can't control much in life. You've probably worked that out this year, that we control about that much of life. Right? I think pre-COVID, I think we all thought that we had some level of control, and then we realized that we have very little. But what we can 100% control is our state. We get to choose how we think, act, feel in any situation. It's the most empowering thing in the world for you to grasp that you get to choose you. In spite of circumstance. In spite of circumstance. Just think about that. Now, a lot of us, of course, that's not how we live. We live, reacting to stimuli. Like if the market tells us we should be sad today, then we're sad. And if the market tells us we should be happy, then we're happy. And then we get blown around by the wind. And that's not you being in control of you. That's you abdicating your state to a million other things, which is never going to drive you to be your very best. All right. So that's, that's kind of what I want to talk into this morning as we do this. Morning, Kim. Morning, Kay. Morning, Gail. Morning, David. So now that we've uncovered what state we find ourselves in, and a couple of you have been honest and they're not so positive, and some of you have been positive, and that's good. I want to look at this through the lenses of what state do you live in, because I think that you can find yourself in one of four places. All right, I think you can find yourself in one of four places in your life, and I want to kind of draw it out for you. Now, I have not checked with the Patrick, who is head of our technology, to work out if this is the same as our studio. In our studio, if I was to hold up some words, they would read the right way, and I don't know that these will. So can you tell me, does that read correctly for you, where this says past and this says future? Or are they the wrong way around here today? Quite often these flip the screen and it's the wrong way. Do me a favor, just let me know. Can you read that correctly? Does it say past to you? Or does it say, or is it gobbledygook because it's run the wrong way? Just let me know. Yes. Okay, well, it looks like it's good with some thumbs up. Always an interesting question when you say, does it read the right way or is it the wrong way around? And the answer is yes. Because what were you saying yes to? All right, good. Well then that's a real bonus. All right, so here's the thing. I believe that most people live in one of these three places, right? So some people, sadly, they live in their past. Okay, they live in their past here. And what that means is, on the timeline of events for their life, they have chosen to live back in the past. Right? Now, what does that mean? That means that they normally keep running a script in their mind of all the things they've done wrong, or more importantly, all the other people that have done wrong by them, and all the people that have let them down, lied to them, cheated them, and their own flaws and so forth. And they live with some romantic notion about how it should have been different and the world owes them something and so forth. The real problem with living in the past is not so much the processing that goes on with living in the past. It's the fact that most people that choose to live in the past camp there for most of their lives. All right. So, the biggest trap to living back here is that it's the stickiest of them all, right? It's probably the most painful of them all as well. But most people, if they decide to live in the past, it's very hard to let go, because although it's painful to hang out there, it's not painful enough to move. So I'm sure you've met these people who they're the ultimate victims, right? And they've always got a story why they've never been able to do it, why somebody else has let them down, why the system failed them, and they can hang on to that. That event might have taken place when they were 20, and they'll hang on to that for another 70 years of their life. And it's incredibly dangerous. And what's interesting for me is that, I've met these people. I can literally say to them, you are not your past. Your future doesn't equal your past, blah, blah, blah. But none of that will make any difference to somebody who lives there because they've chosen to live there, right? They almost build this strong tower around them when they live there that basically says, no one's going to penetrate this thing because everybody's let me down, and all that means is the next people are going to let me down, so I'm not even going to let them in, and here we go, right? So they build this almost fortified city that keeps them trapped. They think it keeps them safe, but it keeps them trapped. Right, so some people live there, and that's, as I've explained, a horrible place to live. Some people live the exact opposite. They live really far out in the future, which is, you would think is inspiring, but it's actually not. Right? When you live really far out in the future, basically you have absolutely no problem dreaming, thinking through the big picture, right? We're going to have $1 billion corporation, or 100 million, or a 10 million, or $1 million corporation. We're going to have all this thing. We're going to have offices in every city in the world. We're going to do all of this. I'm going to need a private jet to get around the world because we're going to be so successful, and I'm going to have all this influence, and then I'm going to run for mayor, and then I'm going to do all of this, and I'll become the prime minister. And these people that live so far out in the future that they have absolutely no problem like turning on the dream machine and just meditating on, all the great things that are going to happen in their future. So you would think that that would be a really good idea, and a lot of places tell you it is a good idea, and to some degree it is a good idea. And this is where it gets a bit messy, because the scholastic system that I went through, it's probably better today. Let's call it better today. The school system that I went through tried to snuff out your ability to dream, right? It was like, that's what junior school is for, and but when you get to school, you've got to forget all the dreams and just try and get good at one thing and do that for the rest of your life, right? So basically, that dream machine was dying. It's probably still handy to have it up until the point where you are 20, 21, like to keep that ability to dream. I know for me that every class I daydreamed. I was dreaming about starting a business, being a business owner, all those sort of things. Very, very valuable at a young age to keep that thinking alive. The problem is that, on the journey of business to be successful, it just takes such a long time that if you only ever live in the future, you end up in a permanent state of frustration. Because you have no problem thinking through all this great stuff that you're going to do and have and be, but you're not there, right? You're not there when it takes 10 to 15 years or more of doing something to be able to start to achieve what those dreams were. And so what happens, those people that live far out in the future every single day find themselves frustrated, angry, resentful to the world, because they constantly comparing, where am I to where I want to be? I'm nowhere near it, right? And they live in this massive tension. I can see it in my mind, but I can't see it in my reality. And it's really winding me up, all right? Now, those people, by the way, who live there, they are very susceptible to adrenal fatigue, burnout, maybe even depression, because they just don't feel like they live in these two different worlds of like, I can see it, I can want it, I can taste it, but I'm nowhere near it, and I'm not getting near it. Every Friday that rolls round, I'm not there, so I beat myself up, and I'm angry, and I'm frustrated, and I want to quit, but I can't quit because I can see the big picture, but I'm nowhere near it, so I want to quit, but I can't quit. And let me tell you, the reason why I'm telling you this is because that's where I spent far too many years. I spent far too many years of my young entrepreneurial life in my mind living in the future. I really have no problem with connecting to the past. Like literally, yesterday to me is dead, right? I could not give two hoots about the weekend that just went. I'll probably never talk about it again, right? That's just me. Like I am so future orientated that it can be dangerous. And I spend a lot of my time, I literally remember every Friday driving home from the office absolutely deflated. And I'm questioning what? I'm about to go into a weekend with the people I love, and yet I've poured myself in all week. I've worked really hard, but I feel rubbish. Why? Because I had this unattainable thing in my mind of where I should be. And so that's obviously very, very dangerous as well for you to live in those places. So of course, the third option, of course, that I've got on my sheet here is that you could live in the moment, in today, right? Now, also good and also bad. If I had to pick between these three, by the way, that would be the best place to be, but it's not the best place to be. So I'm sure you've met those people that live in the moment, and we're all told that we should be present in the moment. Well, I can't do that, and I have tried to be present in the moment 24/7 for a protracted period of time. I have tried and failed, right? Because I think it's not where I should be. I meet people who are present in the moment, right? And there is something envious almost about their life. And I think the thing that I have distilled from those people that are absolutely amazing at living in the moment is they're also completely carefree, right? So they have this amazing ability to connect and be with you and throw caution to the wind and live spontaneously and with this wonderful sense of adventure. Well, that is attractive, but that also won't achieve your goals. So it's better. Like, I'd rather live in the moment than I would be frustrated with the future or in prison of the past. But it's not going to draw the best out of you as an entrepreneur to be, adventurous and carefree and throwing caution to the wind, because that's not how we're wired. We are wired to have a goal and to have a plan and to walk it out and so forth. And so what I'm going to say to you, there's a fourth place that we should consider living on our little chart here. And it's not in the future, and it's not in the past, and it's not in the today. It's somewhere out here. And it'll be different for everybody. Not far enough out into the future where you're constantly frustrated by the fact that you're nowhere near it, right? I think Instagram has had a massive role to play in creating the lie of the ideal future, because you can go on Instagram and you're shown everything that your life is meant to look like by worldly standards, right? It lets you know that you're failing because you don't have a Rolls Royce. It lets you failing because you don't have a plane. You're failing because you don't have an infinity pool out the back of your mansion. It lets you know that, you can't afford to drink Grey Goose, so therefore you're a loser. That's the problem. Like, Instagram has created a show reel that we tend to match up to, and we're nowhere near it, and we shouldn't be. And so that creates a lot of the frustration. But we need a system whereby we are checking where we are on this timeline of events, making sure that we live far enough out from today that we are chasing down outcomes that are tangible and we can see and are real, but not far enough out into the future, of course, that we are constantly comparing ourselves to it to find out that we suck. For me, and this will be different for everybody, for me, this is 12 to 16 months is the little bracket that I find valuable to me, all right? Now, you might think that's really specific. It is specific, but I've had to learn it over time, right? You get self-mastery by staying in the game. So for example, in my mind, I can see the end of 2021 and the start of 2022, and that's about it. Because it's far enough in the future that it means that all the little crap that goes on can fall away, because I can see enough of the big picture that the little stuff doesn't matter. But it's close enough in a way that I can feel progress towards it at regular intervals. Whereas if you set the massive vision and you just hold it, there's no progress on a weekly or fortnightly basis. You're not doing enough to ever move the needle on it. Whereas and for you, it could be longer, by the way. You might be able to get a 24-month window, I don't know. Or maybe it's 10 months, I don't know, whatever works for you. But for me, in that 12 to 16-month window, right, this week that I work, like this week will move me towards being able to see that this week contributed to that big goal, right? So that's the problem with those that live in today. The people that live in today don't have the ability to have a plan to move to tomorrow. So we kind of need to hedge our bets and get our state to be, present future, somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the middle of today future. And that will help us have a tangible enough goal to chase that this work that I'm doing today matters, and near enough that I can see it, right? But not near it, not so close that I don't have to have a plan to achieve it. Okay? So it's an interesting tension that we've got to create in our own eye. The problem I've got is that most people don't even have this conversation, so they live by default in one of the three places, and either one of the two, future or past. But I think that, the number one contributing factor to success in business, the number one, is not whether you have a good plan. It's not even It's not even whether you pick the right business. I mean, they are things that obviously help. Like if you said to me, I want to move into making vinyl discs for music, I would say it's probably not going to work because we've moved on. So there are some businesses that were fundamentally flawed. But steering clear of those, it's not even the business that you choose that will make the biggest difference. It's not even the team that you put on, right? The number one, success factor practically to get you to where you want to go is to stay in the game. Is to stay in the game, and that's what this thinking forces you to do because you've always got a horizon that is, for me, 12 to 16 months out, which means I'm always chasing something that's near enough and far enough away that is tangible. I absolutely know, like I know today as I sit here, whatever it is, 9th of November, like I know today that I'm going to show up every single day in this business in whatever shape it takes. I'm going to show up in this business every single day for the next 10 years. And there's going to be good days and bad days on the same day, every single one of those days for the next 10 years. I'm just going to show up and I'm going to give it my best shot and I'm going to strategize and I'm going to learn, I'm going to pivot, I'm going to innovate, I'm going to do all of those things. I'm going to have massive people that let me down, right? I'm going to have team members that lie and cheat and steal. I'm going to have all of those things, but I'm also going to have a heap of wins. And So what that state, that future present state, being in the middle there, what that allows me to do is have the freedom to see it and not be paralyzed by it and give me the confidence to show up every day to make it happen. That's where I live. That's me. That's why people say, oh, you're so consistent. Yeah, because I'm just going to turn up every day. And, and it's going to suck. And it's going to be great at the same time. And I just think it's really cool. So have you ever found a task that you just had to do in your business, but you put it off? It seemed difficult. It seemed scary. If you've been in business for more than 3.5 minutes, I would assume the answer to that is a yes. All right, so let's look at somebody else that had a task that seemed big and seemed scary. We're going to have a look at the book of Acts right now, the book of Acts. And we're going to go to Acts 9:10. Acts 9:10, which is the story of Ananias, which is a pretty cool story in the big scheme of things, right? So here's how it goes. So in the lead up to this, as you know, there is this guy called Saul who is terrorizing the church and the followers of Jesus, writing letters, falsely accusing them, physically beating them, and so forth. And then on the road to Damascus, Saul has an encounter with God. And as you know, it's a really funny story because when the big flash of light, right? And Saul's first words are, "Is that you, God?" Knowing, see, I have a theory that Saul knew exactly who God was, right? It wasn't, he didn't terrorize Christians for any other reason. He knew God's voice and he knew God was near. He was just being in full rebellion. His first words are, "Is that you, Lord?" And so it is. And then, of course, you know the story, right? God puts him almost in like spiritual timeout, right? 3 days blind in the naughty corner. And that brings us up to Ananias, right? So listen to this. "Now there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias, and to him the Lord said in a vision, 'Ananias.' And he said, 'Here I am, Lord.' So the Lord said to him, 'Arise and go to the street called Straight, and inquire at the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he is praying. And in a vision he has seen a man named Ananias coming in and putting his hand on him so that he might receive sight.' Then Ananias answers, 'Lord, I've heard from many about this man, how much harm he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all who call on your name.'" In other words, God, I know this guy's reputation, right? You're asking me to go down and lay hands on a murderer and a killer and a deceitful, corrupt human being. You want me to go hang out with this person? But the Lord said to him, Go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. For I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. And then Ananias went on his way and entered the house, and by laying on the hands, he said, Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on the road as you came, has sent me that you may receive sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit. Immediately there fell from his eyes something like scales, and received his sight at once, and he arose and was baptized. So that was actually quite a big deal, right? That was not only a perceived fear, but actually quite a real one ahead of time, right? We often have these tasks that we perceive to be big and to be scary, but this one was an actual scary task, right? It was perceived scary and actually scary. And yet what happens? He does it anyway, and that brings a huge amount of liberty to not only Saul, who becomes Paul, but it goes on to bring liberty and freedom to something like 3 billion people ever since, right? Because, we have access to scriptures and Bibles and teachings and scrolls and all this sort of stuff of Paul's writings. So here we have somebody who was scared to do what he was asked to do, but he did it anyway. And so, for us, we often have things that the Lord asks us to do, or even just things that we should do because they're important and they are, they'll build our business, they'll build our influence, they'll, help build our assignment, all those sort of things. And yet we put them off. We put them off because we perceive them to be really scary. And yet the Lord would never ask us to do something and then not equip us with the ability to do it. And he said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. So when you go and take on a task that the Lord has got for you that seems scary, not only are you graced for it with your gifts and your talents, but actually you're partnered on your way through it because God says, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. And so Ananias understood that the Lord was there, and he had, I guess, even more encouragement, saying, this is the will of God and I will be with you as you go. It's the same for you. And yet we tend to conjure up images in our mind of tasks and things that we are supposed to be doing and should be doing and are good for us. But we perceive them to be so big and so scary that, unlike Ananias, we just put them off. And just like Ananias brought a huge amount of freedom and liberty to many, many people, well, actually, so would we if we did our assignments. So would we if we walked in the fullness of what God has for us. So would we if we chased down every great thing and every door that the Lord has predestined for us to walk through. But we tend to operate with a little bit of fear and a bit scared. And so not only do we miss out in our Christian walk of seeing God do the miraculous in our lives, but actually the people that our very act will bring freedom and liberty to also miss out as we don't do our assignments. So I say that all to say to you, what have you been putting off? What have you been putting off? I don't care if it's a small thing. I don't care if it's a big thing. You've been putting it off because in your mind, like Ananias, you perceive it to be big and you perceive it to be scary. But unlike Ananias, you're still not doing it. And you've got to do it. So that's my question for you this morning. What have you been putting off? And then I want to bring you to a philosophy that I have that we teach. And that is the concept of hug the cactus. Hug the cactus. Meaning that there are some things that you're going to have to do as you build a great business that are not comfortable. It's prickly. It hurts. We call that hugging the cactus. And one of the great disciplines that you may want to adopt as you go build a business is ask yourself every single morning, what do I have to do today to hug the cactus and do that stuff early? If you can have the discipline of spotting the tasks that are big and are scary and uncomfortable and prickly and dealing with those first thing in the morning, hugging the cactus first thing in the morning, then the rest of your day will be clear, will be easier, will be more fun, and there won't be a cloud hanging over your head that you are putting off the very thing that you are meant to be doing. So what have you been putting off? What have you conjured up in your mind that seems so big and so scary that it forces you to forget that the very God who called you to do this graces you and travels with you as you do it? What is it? What have you been putting off that you need to be doing right now? Okay, that's my question. So, with that in mind, just take 30 seconds and let's start to get a list down now. What have you been putting off because you perceive it to be too big, too scary, too hard, not worth it, not qualified, all of those things? What have you been putting off? This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about prayer. Why? Well, because we're trying to do kingdom business, right? You can't do kingdom business without first including the king. That's why it's kingdom business. And so, prayer is obviously a vital component of our lives as believers, irrespective of our vocation. But it's an area that I think we'll probably never master. And I just know, just generally, business people struggle with prayer. Not everybody. Some of you guys would be amazing at it. In fact, some of you guys spend so long in prayer you don't make any sales calls. But we want to talk about prayer. And essentially 3 different types of prayer, and then I want to pick up on one and kind of double down on it, right? So the first and most obvious type of prayer is our words, right? Words. And of course, you're probably praying, right? But it's interesting for me because scripture gives us some insights on how to do it. Like do it without ceasing. In every situation, you should be praying. It even uses prayer as the antidote to temptation, right? Just lead me, Lord. Don't lead me into temptation. Let my prayer help me. Like all the way through, right? And and it's irrespective of circumstance, right? You've got all the way through scripture, all the way through the New Testament, you've got people in all kinds of situations, and all of them taking time out to pray. Good situations and bad. And so as business people, we are usually task-focused people, and so we can often kind of put that prayer life on the back burner a little bit, and just while we've got stuff to work through, and I think that's a huge mistake. I think personally that if you were to spend more time in prayer, you'd probably have less things to have to work through. So just using our words is amazing, right? We have to pray, and we have to pray regularly and intentionally, and it's not always easy. I've certainly been through seasons in my life where I feel like I have nothing to say, and that's okay too. All right, that's okay too. God understands. Remember, there's 7 billion people before we turned up on earth, so He knows. He knows the heart and the posture of His children. The fact that you don't have anything to say and you still go in prayer screams so loudly to God about your willing heart. So you've got to use your words, and it's got to be intentional. Okay, and of course, what do we pray for? I kind of want to just go. There's the bless me prayers. Lord, bring me a customer this week. Lord, bring me a staff member. Lord, and by the way, they're okay. They're okay. The Lord fully does not mind blessing you with the desires of your heart. But they're very surface level, right? They're very surface level. As I read my Bible, right, and we will get to it this morning because I feel like just preaching for a second and a half. As I get to my Bible, I see that the people that probably did the greatest work, the people that I read about, like my heroes in the faith, the Joshuas, the Gideons, the Esthers, the, whatever, you can just keep going, right? Joseph's, Daniel's, Jesus, Paul, like all those people, they were not necessarily the best scholars, the smartest, the most amazing human beings. The only consistent distinction between those people was their character. And so I think one of the greatest prayers that you and I could be praying and should be praying is, Lord, show me where my character is letting me down. So now that's not bless me, that's almost break me. And it's a tough prayer, but let me tell you that the other side of it
is a better version of you, and a better version of you is one that looks more like him, and then you can be trusted with a whole lot more. So that, you know, there's the bless me prayers, there's the break me prayers, right, which are interesting. And then I just think, you know, just literally having prayers around gratitude, you know, because gratitude and prayer are also referenced. I think it's in Thessalonians together. So just be grateful for the seen and grateful for the unseen, the stuff that he's doing that we don't even notice, right? So prayer, right? Using those words. And of course he can hear you, and he'll never leave you and never forsake you. Another type of prayer is praying in the Spirit. Now, I've got to be sensitive to the fact that, you know, we are probably not all in the same place on our faith journey. Obviously the Bible talks about being able to pray in the Spirit, being baptized in the Spirit, speaking in new tongues. It's available to every believer, and I think every believer should be pursuing that gift. There's really no point in being given a gift and not opening it. So if you don't, by the way, speak in tongues, that's okay. That's not a slight on you. Just pursue it. Start asking the Lord for what it looks like. Start researching it. Get your knowledge up around what it looks like, and it becomes an incredible, powerful part of your spiritual warfare and your journey. I said before about sometimes you want to pray, but you have no idea how to pray. I tell you how to start. When you've got the gift of tongues, you just start. And before you know it, you're fired up and ready to go and want to tear the world apart. And what an amazing tool that is, right? So just trying to keep it simple, right? It's a phenomenal way to just start praying with the Lord, is to pray in the Spirit. So, for me, I got saved in 2004. I went on a missions trip in 2005 to the Philippines. It was like a youth camp, and I got saved under these amazing grace preachers, and so they took me there because they were not interested in the structure of, you should read, whatever, 21 books on leadership before you're allowed to do this, and then you go to this program and that program. They were not interested. They're like, if you're a redeemed believer, you come over here and preach. And so I did. I really had no idea what I was doing. But and I remember on that trip, I said to these guys, I'd never been baptized. I don't speak in tongues. And they're like, great. Would you like to fix that right now? I'm like, yes, I do. And so we went, during one of the breaks, we went down to the local swimming pool. I remember it was about 4 million degrees. Humidity was about 6,000%. And so we went down to this pool, and these two gentlemen would just explain to me, what happens. Your old man dies, a new man comes forth. And I said to them, and I said to the Lord, I said, listen, I read that Jesus was baptized, and a dove landed on him, like a spirit landed on him like a dove. I said, I want that. And I said to the Lord, I want to come out of the water speaking in tongues, just because. And then literally I came out of the water, and this new voice came out, and it was a real time of celebration. And I literally reckon I prayed in tongues every opportunity for the next 72 hours. It was an amazing thing. So yeah, I suggest you pursue that gift if you don't have it, and if you do have it, dust it off, because it's really, really valuable. All right, the third type of prayer that's a little bit out of the box that I kind of want to major on is listening prayer. All right, so actually not saying anything. A type of prayer posture that just allows you to receive. All right, a type of prayer that allows you to hear that still small voice of the Lord. And by the way, this is probably the toughest of the three. My sheep hear my voice, right? Listen to this, because I like to keep it really simple. Like the reason why the gospel has gone through the generations and has so much power is because it's so simple. If you go to John 8:47, it says, "He who is of God hears God's words." He who is of God hears God's words. Therefore, you do not hear because you're not of God. So all you've got to ask yourself as a believer is, am I a believer? If the answer is yes, then you will hear his words. If you are not a believer, then you cannot expect to hear his words, according to John. So how do we do this? Because it's not easy. It's not easy in a busy world with 4,000 demands First of all, it's not easy to get the time. Second of all, it's not easy to still our mind, but that's what I want to talk about. So we take time, we pray, we might have prayed in the Spirit, we've expressed a gratitude for a whole bunch of things. We've prayed those hard prayers like break me, and empty me out, like geez, they're hard, but maybe we've done all of that, and we come to a time of listening prayer where basically the whole conversation is, Lord, what do you want to say to me right now? And from your point of view, it's with no agenda, with no trying to shape what you're saying, with no disappointment based on what I hear, trusting that that's what you want to say to me right now. What do you want to say to me? And then just being open to listen. So that's it in a concept. How does it play out? This is how it plays out, right? You decide that you want to take this seriously, and you block out some time in your diary, and then you literally just lay down and sit down or whatever, stand up, whatever, and you just go, okay, I'm gonna shut all the noise out of my mind, and I'm gonna hear what you have to say, Lord. By the way, it's not very good the first whole bunch of times that you try, because you'll be there going, oh, yep. So you'll be like, okay, God, I'm fixed on you. And within 7 seconds, it's like, oh, I got to take Susie to ballet, got to pick up dog food for Jester, blah, blah, and then you're off. And then you go, oh, no, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. All right, I'm going to still my mind. And this time you get to 8 seconds. Oh, got a meeting, got to get 7 a.m., got to do that. Oh, crap, anxiety over that, blah, 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 and then we're off again. Yeah, I'll stop. I got to do it. Okay, so after a few days of doing that, you get to catch yourself a little bit earlier, right? By the way, listening prayer is like a muscle. You have to build it up over time. Break it down, build it up, break it down, build it up. And so what happens after a period of time is you actually get a little bit better at this. You create the time. You say, okay, Lord, I'm going to still my mind right now. And one of the things that I did at the start was I just kept a notebook and pen handy, so when I had a thought about something, I could just quickly jot it down so I didn't have to keep thinking about it. That was a little stage I went through. But then after a period of time, what happens is you actually get quite good at it, and it may be a few minutes of just listening, and he might show you a picture or a word or a scripture or something. And then the next stage that you go through is you fall asleep. You could have slept for 12 hours last night. You could do listening prayer at 8 o'clock in the morning, and you fall asleep. By the way, that's a really good stage to go through, because it shows that you were able to still yourself enough to fall asleep. And also, our God who created us absolutely can speak to us when we are asleep. Let's not be crazy about that. In fact, if I was to give you a picture of that, like if one of my daughters, right, came and sat on my lap to spend time with me and fell asleep, would I be upset? No, it probably means that she stays for longer. So that's a beautiful thing. So and then after a while of doing that, you develop the intentionality of being able to still your voice, control the conversations, not fall asleep, and listen to the Lord. And then he can show you often the secret garden path, right? Like what might have taken you 3 months to work out in the flesh, and you get in one word. You can literally get it in one word, one affirmation, one picture, one scripture reference. And so, in a busy world with 50,000 demands, it's important that we create the space, that we be still and listen to what he has to say, because I am convinced that he wants to say a lot more to us than we give him time to do. And often the time we do give him, we're asking for things and he can't get a word in edgeways, but he wants to share something really vital, and it could just be as simple as getting you to absolutely know that you're amazing and he loves you. And then it could be even more than that. It could be, hey, do this deal, ring this person, don't employ that person, right? It could be that practical, and will be, right? Like all the way through scripture, he gave actual tactics down to granular details to many of his children. And we can have that too. Same God, same timeline of events, same outcome God's looking for. So all available to us today. So my hope for you is that you would actually create some time to start this journey. You don't want to put any pressure on yourself and feel like you have to nail this within a week. But you should start. Because the longer you put it off, the longer it'll be before you see the fruit of such an amazing relationship. So that's really it for me. That's all I want to kind of say to you is, those 3 types of prayer are important. But if you actually double down on listening prayer, some people have said to me in the past, I prayed, but God wasn't present. I would say, if I prayed and I didn't hear him, it's because I wasn't present. We have too many demands, and we need to learn how to still them.
I've been thinking about where we are at in our recovery cycle, right? 2020, COVID, lockdown, release of lockdown, Melbourne lockdown again, release of lockdown. Queensland voted at the polls. I don't know what they were thinking, but that's okay. We just have to go with that. So, Queensland has opened to the whole of New South Wales except the bit with the airport. So we're starting to get this opening up that is taking place, and that's important. Morning, David. Morning, Susan. Morning, Ben. Morning, Kay. Morning, Costa. Morning, Kim. So we are kind of coming out of COVID-19 nationally. There's talks about a travel bubble with other countries that are doing well. Obviously, some countries are doing terribly, right? France, Germany, England going back into lockdown, US, highest numbers. So globally, we're obviously not out of it. But as a country, Australia, we're doing incredibly well. And so we're likely to be able to travel amongst the rest of Australia by Christmas. Even West Australia have decided to open up to some states. And New Zealand and Japan and a few other countries that have done well, right? So it kind of gets me thinking, because I always like to be reflecting on my own journey here, to learn about what we could teach. The way I look at it is whatever the Lord's showing me is probably, good for you. And so always kind of reflecting that. And so, I think it's a great time for celebration, right? We got through it, I would say, fairly unscathed as a country. I know unfortunately some people died, and so there'll be some legacy around those families and stuff like that. But generally we came through this unscathed. As an economy, we're obliterated, but not really. We really have the ability to turn the corner now, and we were in recession for 3.5 minutes, but that was only a technical recession. We were never in recession. That was just them looking at data and it triggered what was a recession, but it really wasn't. So we're going to come out of this thing now and race forward. And, I think that's a cause for celebration, but B, also a cause for concern. In my conversations, right, with the 200 businesses that we look after, I'm constantly on the phone to people, and I get to have the privilege of seeing patterns and trends. And certainly in my life, right, when COVID was at the peak, I spent more time with my family because we couldn't, we were semi-lockdown. I spent more time walking the beach with Kimberly and with the kids and homeschooling and all that stuff that went on, as you guys know. And I had some realization then around possibly some areas of my life pre-COVID that were not ideal. They were okay, but they weren't maybe ideal. And so I went through a process of kind of redefining, okay, well, what is important to me now? Now that I've had this reset, now that he's made me lay down by green pastures, what can I learn from this? I went through a journey of basically, looking at the business going, okay, well, there's probably 20% of the activity that's not going to get me where I need to go. So pull that back, redeploy that time into more things that matter, like all of those kind of conversations that I'm sure most of us had. Well, that brings us to today. We run the risk of taking the learnings from COVID and throwing them out the window now that we are somewhat back to normal and we're becoming more back to normal over the next 90 days. And I think it's important that we don't, basically do what the Israelites do, which is every time God showed up and spoke to them, they said, oh, you're our God and our one and only God. And then over time, they just kept throwing that out of the window and just going back to their own selfish ways or their own self-interest ways. And I think we run the risk of doing that ourselves in Australia in 2020. The Lord could have really spoken to us during COVID. And now that we throw caution to the wind, we could just go back to our old ways and not take the learnings that the Lord showed us during COVID forward. And obviously that would be a mistake, because you're basically wasting a good opportunity if you just go back to doing things exactly how you did before. So I look at this and I go, all right, well, obviously, what's some structure we can put around it to make sure that we come out of COVID not only better business or whatever, but I guess I mean better sons, better daughters, better ambassadors, right? Better disciples. How do we come out of this so that we look more like God, right? That's our number one goal through our life, is to better represent him and to become more like him. And so we don't want to miss this opportunity. And so I basically have a bit of a structure here on some things that we can take to our prayer time that will help us in this next season, and not let us just go back to our old ways. So here's what David says, right, in Psalm. David just pours his heart out, right, through the whole book of Psalms, and you get to see a very vulnerable man in that time. But one of the things that I really like as a prayer is Psalm 139:23. So Psalm 139, so nearly the end of the book of Psalms. 139:23 and 24, and this is what it says. David says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxieties, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and then lead me into the way everlasting." So David basically just rips himself apart and says, "Search me, O God. Find the wicked ways that are inside of me, show them to me, and then not only just show them to, don't just bring them to the surface, show me how to drop them so that I can then walk forward with you in the way of everlasting," meaning that I don't have them in my life anymore. I turn direction and I follow a better way, and a way that's going to bring me eternal life. So to me, I'm like, if it's good enough for David, it's good enough for me. Search me, O God, know my heart, try me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way inside of me. I reckon that right there is the prayer for us right now. Maybe it's the prayer full time, but right now, with the way that I set it up, with our, we run the risk of just going back and putting on old clothes, like 2019 clothes, to try and make them fit into 2021. And I think it's a big mistake. And so 3 prayers, 3 questions that you may want to consider praying as you go into this next season. You would have heard one of these from me before if you've been watching along. The first prayer is, "Lord, show me where my character is letting me down." Show me where my character is letting me down. The reason why I say character is because all of the stories in this Bible here were not the most educated, most obvious, most talented people that did the greatest work. They were the people that went on a journey with God to say, "Refine me so much that I can be trusted with the journey." And of course, it's in the refining that we become more like him. Well, we'll either run away from him or we'll become more like him. And so what the Lord says is, become more like me, and you can be trusted with a whole lot more. And so the prayer of, "God, show me where my character is letting me down," really allows God, and he never does it through judgment, condemnation or anything, but he'll just kind of say to you, this little thing and this little thing, and it's usually very little things, but as the Lord is showing you and you can root them out of your life, then obviously you reflect God more. And if you reflect God more, then you can be trusted with the hidden things of the kingdom. So prayer number 1 is, "God, show me where my character is letting me down." Number 2 is another tough one, but I think it's a phenomenal one for right now. "God, show me where I've created an idol in place of you." Show me where I've created an idol in place of you, right? So right now, what are some of the idols that we could be facing as a society? Well, one of the idols that we could have is, we could make home church, right, watching it on our 50-inch plasmas without needing to, go and be in community. We could have made that an idol. We may love it so much that we forget that we actually should be meeting together as humans. That could be a thing. It could be that that we've made food an idol during COVID, which was very easy to do. Maybe alcohol became an idol during COVID. Maybe self became an idol. Maybe I'm just decided that I'm comfortable with where I am right now and I'm not going to push again. Could be an idol. Maybe your desire to race back out and blaze a trail and do it the way you used to do it is an idol because your idol is around the wealth and the prestige that you had, and now there's a chance you can go back to it because we're opening up as a country is an idol. And you may want to pray, Lord, show me where I've got an idol in my life or idols in my life that I have in place of you. And the reason why I framed it in such a way as show me where I've got an idol is because I believe we all have, right? To some degree, we all have. It's not a, Lord, show me if there's an idol in my life. I would say, show me where I've allowed an idol in my life that should be in place of you. Because I think, whether it's something small as, spending too much time on a computer or playing sport or, they can become idols that we should not have. And so now is a great time to get those out of our lives and start to idolize, obviously, just God and recalibrate, because obviously, the danger to us over, the next, say, 48 months, if we don't deal with these things now, is that we won't produce the best fruit we possibly can, right? And so, and then the third one that I really like right now as a prayer that should arrest us is, God, show me where my thinking is too small. So, I think one of the traps of COVID is that a lot of people, who had big dreams and big goals and big visions and big work ethic have actually pegged it back a bit now because of the possibly kick in the guts that COVID was to them. And I'm sitting here going, no, that we can't do that. God, show me where my thinking has been too small, right? We serve an all-knowing God, so let's not take anything smaller than the very thing God has for us. And I think right now it's been easy to play defense in our mind, given the fact that this thing's been 6-7 months. It's enough time for our big vision to lose its edge, and we could play small for a long time. Right? Because everybody's saying, don't push, don't go here, it's hard, it's tough, we're in a recession. And all of those thought bubbles can actually erode our big thinking. And I would say to you, dust it off, because now's the time to potentially think bigger. As long as that thinking bigger aligns with the thing that God has for you, you cannot think too big, right? And so I think that's the thing, like, Lord, show me where my thinking is too small. Right? In fact, what you're saying is, stretch my vision, Lord. Show me a new vision, Lord. Show me a bigger vision, Lord. I want to get my thinking to wrap around a big vision. So they're the three prayers that I think that we should be taking to our quiet time, because I'm concerned that if we, like COVID was not a surprise to God, and he'll use it for good because he always does. And so I'm looking at this going, here's like a moment in time, right? We've been through it. We're coming out of it. We don't want to miss the thing God has for us before we move on to the next chapter, the next season. And so now is the time to basically empty ourselves out. This isn't so much of a business message as it is as an individual message. But if we get this right, of course, then our business can be catapulted to, a supernatural level, because our character allows us to sustain the growth that God will bring. So that's the way I'd be handling it if I were you. I'd be saying, empty me, Lord. And then, take me in the way of everlasting. Show me the path that is a sustainable, supernatural journey that is going to affect generations. And I think we run the risk of missing it in our eagerness to get back out. That's I guess the position that I'm coming from this morning. We want to take a stop. We want to give the Lord a little bit of extra time in our lives to sift us um, before the craziness and the busyness of our former life kicks back in again. That's how you can be trusted with a whole bunch more. All right, do me a favor. What was the one thing that jumped out to you during that, 15-minute monologue? What was the one thing that jumped out to you? Just take 30 seconds of review and put your answer in the chat there for me. I want to talk about the lies in the marketplace that tend to come out in at this time of year, okay? And they are pure evil lies that would be holding you back from building a phenomenal business and being all that you possibly can. And so I'm going to talk into them, and then we're going to put some practical steps around them, and then ultimately get to some of your questions. The kind of rhetoric, right, that is always around in these next 4 to 5 weeks, depending on when you finish up for the year. Most of us have 4 weeks left. Some of us have 5 weeks left. The typical thing that gets said now is, there's no point in following anybody up now because, ultimately, you can't build your business over Christmas. Or, everybody shuts down in my industry. You can't get customers over Christmas. Or, everybody is taking a break, and so the last thing they want to hear is hear anything from me. Or, if I make any sales calls, everybody's just going to say, I'll talk to you in the new year. And so this is what I hear. I hear it all the time, absolutely, flat out. And I just think to myself, madness. Madness, because the same people then on January 4 say, oh, my industry takes a long time to get back together. I can't really do any calls. No one wants to hear from me in January. I'm like, so hang on a minute. December's no good and January's no good. So 1/6 of your entire year, you can't grow a business? Madness. Like, I understand if you want to play small, that's a good doctrine, but it's not going to help you build a business. And here's the cool thing, it's not even true. It is not even true that you can't build a business over Christmas. You may have to change your offering, you may have to change what you're requesting, but you can't afford to lose momentum, right? You build so much momentum in a year, you can't just let it fall away and then have to build it all up again for next year. You want to plow your momentum straight through so that you continually build. And so that's really, for me, what we are going to be looking at this time of year. And even, it's funny because people will still say to me, yeah, that's all good, but you don't know my industry. No. You do not want to be thinking like weasel clauses. Right? You can justify anything if you really want to believe it, but it's not going to serve you to think like that, and it's probably not even true. So there is not an industry that I have met that these 3 things that I want to speak into do not apply. Okay? It could be that you haven't thought about it before, but that doesn't mean that they don't work for your industry. And so that's really why I want to challenge some of your activity. And I want to challenge it 4 to 5 weeks out from Christmas because there's enough time now for you to do something about it, right? If you decide in 3 weeks to do something about it, it's probably too late. So that's why we're talking about it now. I'm setting you up so that you have enough time to do these things to win over Christmas rather than lose momentum. So the first thing I would say to you is right up until the very end of the year, whatever that looks like for you. If that's the 24th, great. If that's the 18th, great. But whatever it looks like for you, right up until the very end, you need to look at all of your sales calls like a sniper. Literally one at a time, every single lead, quote, price, tender, opportunity. You need to think about these like a sniper would. You absolutely zero in on every single one of them with the sole goal of converting them into dollars, right? Do not think that nobody says yes before Christmas. It's an absolute lie. I have always found that my business exploded over Christmas because of the 3 things that I'm going to tell you about. And one of them is you need to absolutely close every possible deal you can in the fastest possible time and don't be put off by your busyness or the perceived busyness of your prospect. They are still looking to grow their business. So literally, like every single lead and opportunity is a yes. And unless it's an absolute no, it's a yes. And you need to follow it up diligently. When they say, I can't deal with this right now, you say no worries and you call them 24 hours later. And when they say I still don't have time to deal with it, you say no worries and you call them 24 hours later. You really, really, really need to focus on conversion, because one of the things that your prospects may do is they may say to you, I'm too busy, or I can't make this decision now. And some of them just need to be pushed to just make a decision, right? Because of their own perceived busyness, they struggle to make a decision, and with a little push from you, they'll make a decision. And so that's only going to help you, right? Can you imagine doing January's sales in December? You'll have a better business. So you've really got to go hard after every opportunity, sales quote, tender, price, whatever it is. The worst thing that can happen is that the work pushes to next year, but you don't want to play small and not call them, right? You still want to chase every single one of them down. It's not the end of the world for me if you're diligently pushing a customer for a yes and they say yes, but they book it in for January. Great, you've got work to come back to. But what you don't want to do is not follow them up and kind of let them get away with it, because the momentum in the relationship come January, you're the most forgotten about person in their life. So that's why I'm saying, with intensity, like a sniper, every single one of those things you want to try and take them out. And that's either convert them now or convert them for January, but you've got to convert them, okay? And don't let anybody off the hook. That's number one. The second thing you need to be doing right now in these 4 to 5 weeks before Christmas is to triple the amount of content you are producing for social media. You need to be running more ads and more organic content over Christmas than any other time of the year. Yes, more ads and more organic content over Christmas than any other time of the year. See, and there's a bit inside you that goes, oh, but everybody shuts down in my industry. No, the industry shuts down, humans don't. Humans don't at all. In fact, more people will spend more time on a device consuming over Christmas than any other time of the year. Why? Because they've got downtime. This is the time in their year where they'll, Christmas Day, they'll stuff themselves with a heap of food, and then they'll have a food coma, and they migrate to the couch and they stare at their phone for 2 hours, right? And that's your opportunity to get on their radar. That's your opportunity to cement the brand that you've been building. That's your opportunity to push an ad into their newsfeed so that you can get their attention, and now they're on your websites, and now we can remarket to them and all the fun stuff that I've been teaching you guys. Triple the amount of content and release it over the 2 weeks of Christmas, right? With a real focus on Christmas Day to New Year's Day. All right? Please take that seriously. Spend marketing budget pushing your message to those people over that time, because human nature will reward you. You might have been on their radar all year, but they never give you any airtime. That's when they're going to give you the airtime and give you the 3 minutes. And when your message pops, they'll be like, right, that's a company or a product or a service that I really need to pay more attention to. But you've got heaps of time now, between now and then, to start producing a whole lot more content that you can schedule organically and pick the best stuff as ads and push it into their newsfeed. Remembering, of course, that the best ads to push over that time are education pieces, right? Don't just go for the jugular and sell something. You can do that. You could do that to the people that you've already got a good relationship with. But actually, if you just start putting out value into their newsfeed and they start watching it, now you're on their radar, right? And of course, we can remarket to people that engage with us and all those things. So triple down on content. And the third thing is you should use these next 4, 5, and 6 weeks to find your next team member. All right. Now that goes against convention. People say no one quits their job before Christmas. Well, I wouldn't say no one. There could be some people that don't want to quit their job before Christmas, but statistically, and here's what most people don't realize, the time in the year that most people look for a new job is Boxing Day to New Year's Day. That's the time of the year when traffic spikes for recruitment sites. And you think about it, right? It's because people are sitting there going, whatever that year, maybe I'll just explore what a change could look like. And then they go online and have a bit of a look around. And if your ad is not there, then you can't fish in the pool that's the largest, and so you miss out. Now you may be saying, I don't want to employ anybody until March. Yep. So still run an ad between Christmas and New Year, because you don't have to employ them straight away, but you can cast a net and see who is out there. You need to always be looking to add a team member. That's how you scale a business. And there is no better time than around that time. So basically, if it's running for a month, right, any time from December 10 to January 10 would be a really good time for you to run an ad. All right, but don't. I mean, that's just using recruitment sites like Seek. You don't have to use them. You could literally jump on LinkedIn, type in the title of the hire that you want, and the area geographical you want to recruit them in. So mechanic Brisbane, you type that in the search bar, you'll see everybody that has mechanic and Brisbane on their profile on LinkedIn, and you send them a message saying, hey, if you've ever considered swapping jobs, we'd love to have a chat with you, whatever. So you could be doing that right now, and you possibly should, and you could be running a Seek ad right over that Christmas New Year break, and you could be running an ad on Facebook, pushing it out to a geographical area saying, I'm looking to recruit. Just don't fall for the trap that no one leaves their job. Yeah, maybe they don't, but it's going to cost you a very small amount of money to find out who's available in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And then the real bet is who's available between Christmas and New Year. And, I think, we live in a world now where most business people are still choosing to recruit when it suits them. And that's a big mistake. Because of the choices that workers have today. So let's say you said, I wanted to hire somebody in September, you run an ad in August. Well, you're only fishing in August, right? Whereas I reckon a much better model is run an ad all year, and when you find them early, June, and you're like, I can't afford them yet, I find a way to afford them. Rather than fish in the pool of August, I'd rather run an ad in June, July, and August and find 3 times as big a talent pool and find the best people. So, I think that's a real thing to consider. And I think it's a huge mistake to put off recruiting until next year. People say, what about all the things I've got to pay for them? There's no holiday pay. You put them on the start of December. They might have 1 day of holiday pay up there accrued or something by the time Christmas rolls around. So that's not a concern. And they know that. If they're going to swap jobs and come and work for you, they know that they don't have any. So don't worry about it. I still think you should do the recruiting thing. So 3 things to consider doing and should be doing between now and Christmas. One of them is to do those sniper calls. Convert everything that moves into dollars and don't believe the lie that you can't get customers over Christmas. Second one is triple down on your content, both paid and organic, so that you can be top of mind over that brand. And then the third one is use this time to hire, and really hire between Christmas and New Year.
I have a belief, a saying. I believe that what I say to myself, about myself, when I'm by myself, will decide myself. What I say to myself, about myself, when I'm by myself, will decide myself. All right? So I wonder, if you actually think about what you think about, what are you saying to you, about you, when nobody else is around? Here's a question for you. What are you saying to yourself, about yourself, when you're by yourself? Because it will be the biggest deciding factor on, your identity and your confidence and things like that. My guess would be that some of you would be saying, maybe not as directly as this, but a different fashion of, I don't know that I'm called to this. I don't know that business is for me. I don't, I'm not good enough, not tall enough, not big enough, not white enough, not black enough, not whatever. Like, I think, we can all find ourselves making statements that pull us down. There would be people that say, well, I shouldn't be doing this because I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, or, no one in my family's ever done anything, or no one in my family wants me to do this. Like I'm, I did this at school, I've had that experience, I went broke once, and we keep running all of these stories, and they will shape you. They will shape you, and you need mastery over your own internal dialogue. If you don't, by the way, become intentional about what you say to yourself, then you are left to society's programming about how good you are. And let me tell you, that's not going to help you move forward. So actually, just to put a line break in there and go, if I think about what I say to myself, what is it? Is it good? Is it moving me forward? Is it going to help me? Is it edifying me? Is it going to, is it going to build me up to be the best me that I can be? Let me tell you, if you haven't thought about it, it's probably not. This process requires you, first of all, to be aware, then change the internal dialogue, and then actually change what you say to yourself. And of course, we're talking here ultimately, I guess, about identity, but for me to change out the identity that you've got and to replace it with the identity you have in Christ, that all makes sense, but you've actually got to first go through the process of working out what's the identity that is no good, to then want to root it out, to then work out what God says about you, to put that in its place. And all this process is literally just trying to get you to go, okay, well, what's not serving me well? What are some of the thinking that I've got around me that's not going to move me forward? Where am I not being my best me? And then, of course, from there, swapping it out with what God says, right? Your life will change in 5 minutes when you start to say things to yourself that line up with a child of God. For example, why would you tell yourself that you're not confident when the Bible says you're a royal priesthood? A royal priesthood. It also goes on to call you a peculiar people, but they're two very competing thoughts. God's identity of me as a royal priesthood, and yours could be whatever. I failed once, therefore I'm not very good, or I can't public speak, or I'm not, you'll never be the best that you can be when your own internal dialogue does not line up with what God says about you. And so we're talking here about shifting your identity, but the first step to that is working out what you say to yourself right now, because that gives you the intel into where some of your thinking is not helping you. So I guess the process from here is simple, right? Is to, whether you use voice notes or whether you use notes on a phone or a physical journal or a notebook, just to be aware and capture the thoughts that you have about you during the day, right? So whether that's driving or brushing your teeth or in the shower or whatever, wherever you find yourself, just turning on that your reticular activating system and just kind of starting to be aware of it so that you can write it down. Here's what science tells us. Science tells us that 80% of our beliefs are on repeat every day. Every day, 80% of our thoughts are repetitive. And of those, most of them are negative. So this is just a good opportunity for you to think about what you think about and start to document it. Because on the fly, of course, you're never present enough to realize that they're not serving you. But actually taking the time to jot it down, you'll start to see the patterns and the trends of what you're saying and what you're thinking about yourself. And you can really go in and go, oh crap, I'm saying that thing there, 7 times a day or whatever. And then of course you can go, well, that's not going to serve me. What does God say about me that is the opposite to what I'm saying about me? And start to meditate on what God says. And before you know it, you'll swap out those thinking and you'll start to have an identity that's more like the one Christ has for you, right? So I want to make it practical, not foo-foo. At the end of the day, we are talking about, fluffy stuff, but ultimately, you'll never be your best when the things that you say to yourself is are negative. We all know the power of a good sermon. Like you get a good sermon, it'll change your life. Well, you guys are preaching sermons to yourself all day, every day. And if they're not sermons that are going to edify you and build you up, then they can only be the opposite. And so you want to know that. You want to know what it is that you say to yourself, because it reveals a whole bunch about how far you're likely to go. And then, the step one of being aware of it is literally just so you can document it, and then you can go through the process of swapping out your thoughts to make your thinking line up with God's. So that's it. Journal, notebook, voice notes, however you want to do it. Just start to be aware of what you say to yourself, about yourself, when you're by yourself. And then once you realize there's a list of junk in there, which you will have because we all do, then you can go about swapping it out.
One of the things that I am a really big believer in is never wasting a moment, right? You would have heard me say that minutes matter. And that's just as true in these last few weeks of December as it is in the first few weeks of January. And yet, a lot of people get to this point in the year and they are tired and weary. And that's okay, by the way. That's okay, especially this year. This year, it's not so much a physical drain as it has been a mental drain for a lot of people. So that's okay that you get weary. It's just not okay that it means that you go slow. And so I think strategically, though, at this point in the year, you will fall in one of two camps. This is either your busy time right now, right, where you're in retail or something, where literally this is when you get all your sales, or you're not, and this is the kind of time of year where you do get to maybe even look after some of the back end, and you're not so much in demand. Maybe a service business might be like that in some cases. So it doesn't really matter which one you fit in. What matters is how you handle it. And so what I would like to pitch to you this morning is that there's one of two words that need to come out of your mouth every hour, right, until you finish for the year. I believe that right now you need to make a strategic decision. Are you focused on money or are you focused on momentum? It's probably not going to be both, but it has to be one or the other. So here's what I mean. If this is your time of year when you make your sales, you need to do nothing but money chasing. Every single dollar from every single customer. And that's because, that's going to be the money that sets you up to come out of the blocks really quickly in January. All right. So the money one's easy, right? Just push everything aside and make hay until the end of the year, right? That's easy. The other one, momentum, is a little bit more challenging, because what I'm saying is, if this is not your time to shine, where you're going to make all your sales, you need to play at 100% to build momentum ready for next year. If you think about it, it's pretty foolish to take the last 2 weeks of December off and then take 2 weeks in January to ramp back up, because you've lost 1/12 of your year. And if it's longer than that, whatever, 1/8, it's a really bad model. It's not even the time you lose, it's the momentum you lose, because momentum is exponential. So if you stop, then you've got to start again from zero momentum, in January to get up and going. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying you need to ask yourself consistently, ongoing, and what am I focused on right now? Money or momentum? Because it needs to be one of those. Like I said, if it's money, easy, chase every dollar and put all your focus on getting every dollar out of every customer. If it's momentum, what are you doing right now to play at 100% so that during the break, however long that is for you, 2 days, 4 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, so that your momentum that you're taking into Christmas is still in place, and then when you come back in January, you get lift off, right? So you're either chasing money or you're chasing momentum. Now, what do I mean by momentum? I mean like utilizing these last 2 to 3 weeks to be doing everything you need to do to set up 2021. Do you need to like be really intense with systems and processes ready for next year? Do you need to be, do you need to really get on top of your finances right now so that next year you've got better reporting and better structuring so that you can do a better year? A really obvious one is, do you need to sit in front of a camera right now for an entire day filming 14 pieces of valuable content so that you could drip feed and schedule one of those a day to drop during the Christmas break? Because it's really interesting for me how much I hear people say, no one's going to want to watch my content over Christmas. I'm like, you could not be further from the truth. The actual reality is people have more time to watch content over Christmas than they did in the rest of the year, right? Because they're filled up on turkey and now they need something to do so they can zone out. Now they're looking at their phone, and if your content's not there, you're not building brand. So one of the greatest ways to build momentum this year is to block out some time this year to produce your content, to be putting it in front of people over the Christmas break, right? Please do not subscribe to the, but we're B2B and so, no. Everybody spends more time looking at their screen over Christmas than any other time of year, right? So you should be doing that. So I'm just looking at this going, it doesn't matter to me whether it's content, doesn't matter whether it's infrastructure, systems, products. Another one, of course, that would be phenomenal to do right now would be recruiting, right? Do you need to spend time on momentum running ads now or next week or the week after, trying to find talent so that next year you can bring them on board, and of course, obviously set yourself up for a really good year. So, and by the way, just on the concept of recruitment, I don't know if I've said this to you or not, but the number one point in the year that people are looking for jobs is Boxing Day to New Year's Day, right? That's the number one time of the year when Seek will have its highest amount of visitors. And that makes sense to me, right? Very few people leave a job in the month before Christmas because of the uncertainty. But most people who don't like their job go looking between Christmas and New Year when they have some time off. So that's the number one time you should be putting an ad up on the Seek or any other place. Indeed, Career One, whatever, posting it to Facebook, whatever, however you're going to attract your talent. Probably all of those if you're serious. So I'm sitting here going, you cannot afford even a little bit to cruise into Christmas, right? You're either going for money or you're going for momentum. Momentum meaning you play until the very end, building all the things you need now. Don't believe the lie that you're tired. You're only tired because you keep saying that to yourself. And if you are tired, go to bed early tonight, wake up late tomorrow, then your tired's done. Then you can put in 2 more or 3 more big weeks, right? So, but a lot of people will put off until next year to build momentum for next year, and then your momentum won't kick in until March, right? Whereas I'm saying, let's do it now. Let's build momentum now so that when we come back on January 3, 4, 7, 10, whatever it is for you, bang, you come out of the blocks and you're building on, all the marketing has given you leads so that your inbox is full. So on January 4, you're converting them and now you've got heaps of work, and now you've got a team member so you could grow, and you've bought some more equipment this year ready for next year, whatever you need to do in terms of infrastructure. But most people don't think like this. Most people are thinking, well, you can't really build a business over Christmas, which is an utter lie from the devil, right? So you get to control how big your business is on January 4, but that'll be decided by your actions today. So if you're chasing money, of course, that's phenomenal because you're going to make the money now that you're going to invest on January 4 to really, really grow and spool up the business. Or you're doing momentum now so that when you come back, you're not starting from scratch. You might have heard me use the analogy of getting a steam train out of the station, right? Back in the days of steam trains, to get a train that's stationary up to speed was a lot of hard work, right? They're shoveling the coal into the furnace like a crazy man to try and get the temperature up, to try and get the steam hot enough. But once it's at cruising speed, they just have to put one shovel in every now and then to keep the heat. And that's the problem. If you don't look at 2021 now, then you basically have to start again, and that's going to take you too many weeks.
You know, there are many people who actually, let's just call it most, like the largest majority of people who do not function at their best at this time of year, right? They're at 90%, they're at 80%, they're at 50%. Some people are functioning at 20%, and you know, in my mind, this is the season that separates good from great, right? You know, here we are, whatever we are, you know, you might have 1 week left of work, you might have 10 days if you're doing a little bit next week. Either way, like, this is separation season. This is what separates good from great. Good business people from great business people. Good businesses from great businesses. And so, you know, you might be thinking, oh, can you give us a bit of a break? Well, actually probably not. You know, like, morning Anthony, morning Kelly, morning Gail. You know, just probably not. Like, I think that it is a discipline to leave it all on the field. And I don't see many people do that, you know, like, you know, and it's funny, I get to see a lot of your Facebook threads and things like that, because they come up in my algorithm because you're part of the group, and I get to see, you know, like, just maybe not playing at 100%. Some of you are playing at 100 and some of you are not. And so I guess, you know, in separation season, right, this point that we find ourselves in now, where you've only got 5 or 10 days of business left, it's still important that we play and run at 100% until the very end. It's really important that we do that, and harder and harder and harder as you go. So here's a framework, I guess I would put that through to try and help you get a handle on what does that look like. I understand that it can be weary, and so you don't always necessarily know. Like, the concept of just one more is really powerful, right? If you, any of you guys that go to the gym, you will know that, you know, it's the 10th rep, right, lifting weights or whatever, that actually gives you the greatest gain, right? But you have to do the first 9 to get to the point where you're fatigued enough to be able to do the 10th, which does the damage, which makes you stronger. All right, you know, as you do the 10th rep and you really can't get there, and your body's fatiguing, the muscles start to tear, and then of course that's where your strength comes from, because they repair even stronger. It's the same thing now in business, right? It's doing the one more, right? So one more phone call to, you know, to chase up your debtors, one more phone call to, you know, follow up your leads, one more phone call to a cold prospect, one more big sales push, one more Facebook tweak, one more Google Ads change, one more chat with your team, one more extra hour at the end of the day, one more evening that you've got to push, one more, you know, getting through those quotes. Just the concept of one more, whether you're working this week or this week and next week, will really help you push through and make sure that when you do break for Christmas, you can sit down with a double portion of turkey ham, right? And you can sit there and you can be proud of the fact that you played at 100% until the very end. See, when you don't do the one more, you know, you kind of get to Christmas and you may have done great things this year, but you can never say to yourself that you laid it all on the field. And that's what this will do for you, because you'll be able to sit down, right, with your shandy or whatever you're going to drink, and you'll go, that's it. I went at 100% and I couldn't have given any more. The concept here is just one more, right? Just one more. I wonder what you could do just one more of during this break, right? Is it that you're going to start calling your prospects and wish them Merry Christmas, and you were just going to do your best customers? Well, let's just do one more, right? You know, is it that you were going to handwrite some cards? Just one more. Is it that you were going to, you know, whatever. It could be one more of anything. It could have been that you were going to finish on Friday, but you've realized that, you know, you're not going to get everything done by Friday. Maybe it's just one more day. Maybe it's just one more day and you work a Saturday, because then you can invoice the job out, which means you can get paid, which is just better than having one day carry over to next year. Just one more. right? Just one more Facebook post, just one more video that you shoot as content, right? I'm sure you've all got your 14 pieces of content to put out over social media during the break. Maybe just one more. If you've got 3 pieces of content to put out over the Christmas break, just one more, right? You understand the concept here is just one more. And if you put these next 5 to 8 to 9 days of work this year through the lenses of just one more, you will achieve more. You'll do more, which will produce more, which will ultimately mean, you know, whatever, more clients, more leads, more customers, more cash flow, more money in the bank. It will always lead to more money in the bank when you do more. So my request for you in this season that separates good from great, just do one more. Make it a mantra that you live by until the very end. Just one more.